wanted to officially welcome you to my podcast. And also, I did some quick reading about you, and then your, media person. Mia's great because I've worked with other people that have been on my podcast through her.
Uh-huh.
And
Good.
she's very, she makes my job easier because I usually have to do a lot of prep and I send you questions, but yeah, she does it all. So it really cuts down on the work that I have to do.
That's great.
Wanted to ask you what led to your interest in women who are menopausal, midlife, and eating disorders that present during this time period?
Well, I think, I've had my practice for about 15 years, and I have a specialty in medical nutrition therapy, which kind of encompasses everything and really niche down to eating disorders and sports nutrition. I feel like there's a great need for specialists, and it's almost kind of, I know this is kind of a strong word, but dangerous for people to work with individuals who don't have the right experience with sports nutrition and eating disorders. And I started to notice a pattern in the last 15 years. And it really seems like the pattern is I start to see eating disorder patients at that pre-puberty puberty age. And then again, it was coming back around, I would say, early to mid 40s and later. And so as that pattern was continuing, I would kind of talk with other professionals. And then, of course, I'm not shy to say I'm 48 years old myself. So there is nothing better than having kind of a lived experience with the lovely, perimenopause, menopause. And I think there's such a lack of research and, in that field that I've kind of dove in, to kind of help myself and help other women.
Right. There is such a lack of research. And, I'm 53. So I remember, and, for me, that weight change happened early on. It's like I have a very strange pattern, as to how things present. And a lot of it is hormonal. But I remember when it happened, even when it was happening as a doctor, I was like, what is going on?
Oh, yeah. It's shocking.
Yeah, I'm working out every day. You could argue that I was probably not eating the best things, but not that I was overdoing it, but whatever. So, but even those things were, I think, triggering weight gain and the underlying genetics, with my family.
Hey everyone, big shout out to Ariel Vivleka, founder of Finally All Natural. Ariel is on a mission to educate people about hidden ingredients in skincare products. Did you know the FDA allows incidental ingredients that aren't labeled or disclosed? That's why Finally All Natural is special. They focus on how ingredients are created, excluding extracts and essential oils, and have world-first formulas that work for a variety of skin types. They've also partnered with CleanHub for eco-friendly packaging and offer an exclusive organic face oil that has been scientifically proven to boost the proteins in your skin, enhancing hydration and strengthening the skin barrier. All 100% vegan. If you're into holistic skincare or non-toxic living, Ariel is your go-to expert. Keep up the amazing work, Ariel. Get in touch with her today. All the links are in description below.
So it was really confusing, and it took me a long time to kind of figure out what was. So women who come in at this stage, and I see a lot of women in my practice, like it's just happened over the past 2 decades where I started attracting a lot of women patients, and the number one question is, something is really wrong with me. Can you please help me?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. I feel like women almost feel hopeless, right? Like, so
Yes.
Exactly like you said, I think the strangest thing with perimenopause is that it happens regardless of what you're doing. So many women say, I haven't changed anything. I'm still working out. I'm still active. I'm still eating the same way, but I can't sleep. My mood is changing. And I also think, we're so lucky to have providers like you. I do think that there's a lot of providers who haven't been trained on menopause and don't really necessarily know like when perimenopause starts. So a lot of times when women are talking about their symptoms, I don't want to necessarily say it's brushed off, but I know I am told and still was just told at my last visit, you're too young. And I'm not too young. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's, the thing is, Amy, I actually did not receive that much information or training regarding this stage of life. I think when it only hit me, and by the way, I'm not even, there yet. I'm not even menopausal. A lot of people assume I go to the GYN's office and they think, oh yeah, you're not having your periods anymore. I am. But perimenopause really hit for me at 39.
Wow.
And I'm going to edit some of this out, but like I had a baby at 42.
Wow.
So a lot of stuff can still happen.
Absolutely.
During this stage of life.
Yes. Yeah.
So just because you're perimenopausal doesn't mean that, everything kind of just shuts down, but it can be very challenging. And that was when I remember I was in Lower Manhattan where I used to, work. And it was like, what is going on? I'm not losing weight. I'm gaining weight. I'm not even, and then it took me like a good amount of time to realize that my body was changing. And, that's where I think the interest started happening, where I was like, okay, this stage is very challenging. Nobody told me that this would happen, and I remember back to my mom who had a different set of stressors than I did, and some of the body changes that happened with her. And then I realized, okay, this happens to a lot of us, but it can look different. The mood issues and all of it, joint pains, palpitations, sleep issues. Not everybody has those things, right?
Right.
I want to take a moment to give a huge shout out to Melissa Murphy-Pavone and her amazing team at Mindful Financial Partners. Melissa has over 18 years of experience as a certified financial planner and divorce financial analyst. And what truly sets her apart is how she values people over portfolios. Whether you're going through major life changes or just want to take control of your financial future, Melissa's approach is all about aligning your wealth with the life you truly want to live. She doesn't just focus on growing wealth, but also on creating balance and purpose in your financial journey. You can get in touch with her at her website, mindfulfinancialpartners.com, and you can find all the links in the description. Be sure to check it out.
Right.
So, and then in practice, right, and especially now with all these weight loss medicines, I see a lot of women who are just frantic about their weight. And it leaves me worried because I'm not necessarily sure that they're doing it for the right reasons, number one. Not everyone, but some of them. And then number two, my question is, I'm not an eating disorder specialist. I will not claim to be one, I'm always like, okay, what underlying psychologic issue is there that is driving this,
Yes. Yes. And I think that's so important because I think that, with perimenopause, a lot of research supports that the first thing that happens is body dissatisfaction. And sometimes that will happen even before people are actually recognizing the symptoms. And you said something really important that really stands very strong with me is that you thought about it and said, oh, this happened. This is something that happened. So to me, that sounds like there was a form of acceptance, right? I think that just the way that the world is right now, our population is addicted to the magic bullet, the quick information, and there's really no regulation out there. So if you are in a moment of feeling that you have such body dissatisfaction and you want to make changes, you can just type into the internet. And right now, like if you do type weight gain with perimenopause in the internet, one of the top search results is the GLP-1 medication. And sometimes I even see that above hormone replacement, right? And it's tricky because in the past, hormone replacement therapy was kind of deemed a negative from a bad research studies. I think the issue is when the media gets a hold of it and they change the narration. And so it's really tough because I think we have to really help educate consumers to be kind of better consumers, look at where you're getting your information from. But I agree with you. When that desire to lose weight is rooted in, judgment, body dissatisfaction, guilt, shame, I think that we need to kind of look into that a little bit more because I do think, it stinks to say this, but the way that I try to present it to my patients is, we need to accept that this is what your body is doing right now and it's temporary. Now, I don't mean it's temporary a couple of months, right? But what can we do to change how you're physically feeling, right? We know that if we can change sleep and we can kind of change activity so that it's something that we enjoy a little bit more, we'll be more consistent with things. And oftentimes I find that actually stops the weight gain. So the first process is let's stop the gain, right? And then kind of go from there. But it does worry me. I think that it's rooted in a lot of negative things. And, let's be honest, a lot of the research supports that like when you do use a GLP-1, once you go off, you're going to have that weight gain. So then we're kind of in that circle of chaos. So we're back to the judgment, the guilt, the shame. It's just from a mental health perspective, really dangerous to me.
It is. And don't get me wrong. I do prescribe GLP-1s. It's not like I don't.
Yeah.
And they do help with a lot of things.
I agree.
But at the same time, the frenzy of what I'm experiencing as a physician does leave me worried that people are not necessarily doing the right things on that. Yep. They may not be eating right. They're not getting enough protein. They're not getting enough fiber. They're not exercising. They're not maintaining their muscle mass. And then they're just relying on a medication to kind of support them. So,
Are you a woman with big financial dreams but no idea how to reach them? You'll love working with Dr. Annie Cole, a money coach who's on a mission to help women earn more, build wealth, and retire early. In her 20s, Annie was a burnt-out social worker, struggling on a $26,000 salary. By her 30s, she had climbed the ladder to a vice president role, invested over $350,000, owned $1 million in real estate, and cut 20 years off of her retirement date. She now runs her own coaching business, Money Essentials for Women, and inspires women to step into new levels of money mastery and confidence. Ready to see how Annie can help you? Set up a free financial consultation at www.money-essential.com/coaching. While you're exploring her services, grab a copy of her new book, 101 Ways to Build Wealth, at money-essentials.com/book.
So we've talked a lot. I think we've just hit it off right off the bat, right?
Right.
But let's start from the basics, right? What do you see in terms of eating disorders? Educate my listeners as to what type of eating disorders do you frequently see during this period of midlife, perimenopause, and menopause.
Well, it's interesting because I read a lot. I'm kind of a nerdy geek where I read a lot of research. And one research study that I really agree with supports that oftentimes in that perimenopause stage, like before people are diagnosed and they know what's happening, we see a little bit more of that emotional eating or binge eating, believe it or not. And to me, that makes a lot of sense because we have a distinct change in our hormones. Our estrogen drops, our ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, increases. And then if you kind of look at all the compounds of mood and not sleeping, to me, that makes complete sense. Mindless eating in a short amount of time. I think so. So that is common. Oftentimes, that can then move towards, or there's some people who kind of are in more of that anorexia kind of where there is such an intense fear of gaining weight that there is a dedicated restriction to make sure that they continue to lose weight. And then sometimes I see it, I really don't see it that much with the menopausal or perimenopausal woman is bulimia. However, I would say the way that we traditionally think of bulimia is kind of that binge purge. I think a lot of people forget that exercise can be a form of bulimia. So I think that that is something really important for every provider to kind of look into. What is that relationship with exercise? One of the most interesting things that I see, and I would see this is probably what I see the most of, is something called orthorexia. And orthorexia is not listed in the DSM-5. But it is an interesting it has an interesting way that it presents. So oftentimes it is rooted in that body dissatisfaction, and it doesn't necessarily look like a fear of gaining weight in a, sudden restriction or a binge purge. It's more of a kind of a compulsion with eating a certain way or eating certain types of foods or looking at ingredients. So often you may see that somebody decide that they're going to go vegan, for example. And not that I'm saying that's bad. However, they're so black and white. There's no flexibility. And it really leads to excluding so many food groups that naturally you're not eating enough, and it can lead to malnutrition. So I see like vegan or vegetarianism. I'll see, of course, as I think this won't surprise anybody. We'll see the gluten-free, the dairy-free, and then a pretty big preoccupation on ingredients. So you'll often hear like, I'm going to eat clean, which, clean eating to me is just like a marketing scheme. There's no such thing from my perspective. You know what I mean? And so that's what I really, really see. And when someone with orthorexia is presented with having to go somewhere where they're not sure what these ingredients look like or going to a restaurant, they will isolate themselves. They will not go, places. And it leads to not only the malnutrition, but also, increased anxiety and, depression and things like that.
I'll be honest with you. I've never heard of orthorexia. So when I read about it, I was like, okay.
Yeah,
I think I've seen this before.
Yes, it's very interesting. And I think we're starting to see it more just because it's being talked about. I feel like it's rising due to, and I hate to say this because I sound like a broken record, but when we think about like social media, diet culture, I mean, look at the red dye number 3, that being banned. It's a dietitian's nightmare to see what everybody's writing about that, all over the internet and Instagram. It's fear mongering. And I mean, when we really think about it, like how many of you go into your pantry and have a plethora of red dye number 3 really in your pantry? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, social media has really changed the game for so many different things, especially with medicine, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So, and some of it is good, some of it, but there's a whole lot of it that I don't know what to say.
I know.
It definitely spurs anxiety amongst people, and sometimes including myself even.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's times that I will read something and kind of second guess myself, like, wait a second, did this change? They're so, confident in the way that they're presenting the information. And it's just very interesting. It's like you have to do your own due diligence sometimes to see, like, is this really correct? It's very interesting.
So with these types of eating disorders that you just described during this time of a woman's life, when you recognize one of these in someone, how do you address it with them?
I think it's important that you have that rapport and trust. So you're going to do a lot of motivational interviewing and really understand kind of what a day-to-day looks like and understand their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions around food. And I think the best thing is to really be transparent and honest. Right. So I feel like dietitians are kind of lucky in the fact that like we still can't diagnose. Right. So we get to have these conversations in a way, where we can still be empathetic and compassionate. But there's times that I'll go through the DSM still, with my clients and ask questions. And, I'll say, have you ever thought that you have a disordered relationship with food? Like, how do you think that your relationship is? most of the time, I would say my patients suspect that they have an issue, right? At first they'll come and they'll be very steadfast and I like to eat clean and this is what I like to do. And then as we can start to work together and we change things, they'll recognize, oh, wait, I actually feel better on this plan. So they'll start to notice that maybe they're not thinking of nutrition the right way. And then once we have that discussion, I always tell my patients, I don't need to treat to a diagnosis, but I need to treat to symptoms. And we'll talk about what will happen if they continue with the restriction or the purging and talk about it from a malnutrition standpoint. I think I'm lucky in the fact that depending on how long the eating disorder has occurred, with the perimenopausal and the menopausal women, they're feeling so badly, physically. I mean, with all the symptoms, that once we have that relationship and they trust me, we can really talk about, hey, we want to change things to help you feel better physically. And, we can wrap the education and sometimes, we'll bring therapy in as well to kind of help with that behavior change. But I think honesty and transparency is, the best thing. And then really working on that education and kind of making changes from there.
So this was a great conversation that I had with you. If my listeners want to learn more about you, where can we find you?
So you can find me at my website, which is kindrednutrition.com. And then I'm also pretty active on Instagram, learning more and more about it each day. And I'm at Amy Goldsmith RD. And then Facebook, Kindred Nutrition.
You post like pearls about nutrition and things that we can do to help with our diet and
yes.
That's awesome.
I have nutrition tips, some recipes. Sometimes I try to do a little shock post. So, I'll kind of pull some things from the media and talk about how that might be misinformation and present it in a different way.
Wonderful. I'll definitely, make sure to obviously include all of this in the show notes so that people will have an easy way of clicking and going to your site immediately.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Amy, that was great.
It was great. Thanks for having me. I love that. Great conversation.